We are continuing our series, Faithful Presence, and our mission, as he also mentioned, we exist to unite people in the way of Jesus. That's particularly important for the message. Keep that in mind today. Like, we exist. We are here to welcome everyone into God's family and to take people that would sometimes not naturally hang out together or want to be around each other, find commonality in the gospel so that we form community together and from our different beliefs and backgrounds and perspectives and experiences, we are united under the banner and in the family of Jesus. So today, I want to talk about presence over performance. Presence over performance. The idea that it's more important to be a presence, be present to God, to be present to self, to be present for others, than to be performance-oriented or performance-minded. So there are times in people's lives where they just need you to show up and help. If they're moving, they need your help. If their dog runs away, they need your help. If they look at you in the face and say, I need your help, they need your help. I don't know if you know that or not. If they're asking for help, they need your help. Sometimes, though, and you know this too, but sometimes people don't need you to do anything for them. They just need you to be you in their physical proximity. They just need your presence. They need you to not like do stuff for them or be an additional burden to them. They just need you to show up. I'm thinking of like crisis moments or moments of grief. Things are going wrong in their life. They don't need answers. They don't need explanations. They don't need you to do or to explain or to especially spiritually bypass and say that God's going to make everything okay. That may be true. They just don't need to hear that in the moment. They just need you because you're their friend, you're their family, you're their support system. They need you, right? Like, we get that. How many of us are like really great at that? Yeah, right. How many of us are working on being better at that? Like, that's like all of us, right? I think wisdom is knowing the difference between knowing when people need our help and when people just need us to be a presence for them, right? So I want to look at the story of Job just to real quick kick things off. I'm going to give you a brief overview of his life because it's the melodrama of Job. And it really is. It's kind of like a melodrama, highs and lows. Job's got different people in his life, and he's this guy in a Middle Eastern country thousands of years ago. And the Bible describes him as someone who is righteous and upright. And he's kind of like this wealthy guy. He's well-to-do. He's got this extended family. He's got all this property. He's able to put food on the table for many, many of his extended relatives. And life seems to be doing really he seems to be doing really good in life. And then the story kind of zooms out, and it says that Satan approaches God and says, hey, look at that dude. That dude only likes you because stuff is going well in his life. Now, there's a host of theological questions that we just cannot get into about, like, why are Satan and God having conversations about a dude in a Middle Eastern, I don't know, we just aren't able to go there. But basically God goes, no, my servant Job, he's upstanding, he's upright. You kick all the props out of his life, his heart is still pure. It's still for me. So that's what happens. Job gets a lot of things taken away from him. His sons and his daughters, they actually die. There's this crisis on his land. He actually develops like these boils, these skin issues. He's absolutely miserable. And he's got no explanation. He's just wondering, like, what is going on in my life? Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? And he doesn't actually have an explanation for this. And he's got these friends that show up. He's got 3 buddies that the first thing that they do in the story is they just show up and sit in the dirt with him. And that was their best offering. That was the best thing that they had to offer, like that consolation of friendship, that what's been called ministry of presence, just being in a physical space, mourning with those who mourn. The worst thing that they did is next when they opened their mouth, because they started to explain to Job all the reasons why he was going through this. He sinned, God's unfair, life's unfair, the world's unfair, like just these host of theological answers that, truth be told, they're not necessarily wrong about. It's just the wrong thing at the wrong time, right? You've been there, I've been there. We've been on both sides of that. It's nasty when it happens, but sometimes you can't help yourself. For you just feel this anxiety of I want to help. And the only thing I know how to do is, show the world my foot and mouth disease that just happens to show up in situations like this. It's uncontrollable when it shows up. I'm not in control of the situation that I find myself in when I'm trying to explain God to people, right? So Job, finally, he kind of picks himself up. He starts to demand answers from God. He starts to question God. He starts to wonder about could his friends be right about some of this stuff? And so God shows up and asked him, he shows up in this whirlwind and asked him a series of questions like, hey, Job, since you're so smart, where were you when the stars were hung? Where were you when the oceans went this far and then stopped in their banks? Where were you when all this happened, by the way? And Job's like, I will be quiet from henceforth, basically. He repents humbly. He's kind of restored in his humility and his understanding of God's here, I'm here. That's actually the relationship we want, et cetera, et cetera. So God actually restores his fortunes. He restores his family, restores a lot of things in his life. Of course, went through this traumatic experience. I'm sure his life was never the same for him, but he was rewarded for his faithfulness. And I find that what's interesting is the first chapter of Job, as this is getting set up, it sets this picture of the upright heart of Job and who he was. It says this in Job 1, verse 20. At this, Job got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, check this out, in all this Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. In all of that, I think that's why he got the book named after him. In all of that, he didn't sin. This is why the book is not named Josh or one of your names, because if I go through this stuff, if I stub my toe, I don't know that it could be said, in all this, Josh didn't sin. You know what I'm saying? The stuff that comes out of me in uncomfortable moments, I do have a book of the Bible that I'm named after, but, that's all right. Not all of us do. It's a completely different thing. But in all that he did, Job didn't sin. It's not sin to ask questions. It's not sin to necessarily doubt. There's some stuff going on inside of us sometimes that leads that to be sin. But Job had all these pressures. If you think of the pressure, the amount of pressure that he was under, the relational pressure, even his wife was hey, just curse God and die. Just be over, be done with it, right? He was tempted by his friends, even by his spouse. He had mental and emotional anguish that he was going through. He had spiritual, pressure that he was experiencing. He had all these pressures from without and from within, begging him to exert some sort of outburst or have some sort of final condemnation of God. And in all that, he didn't. He was able, in the midst of all of what was going on in his life, all of the pressures, he was able to still turn to God, to worship, and to remain humble in the midst of all of that. So, how? That's the question. How? How does he stay steady? How does he not crumble? How does he not sin? How is he not act outside of how he wants to act? We could say, well, he just kept his eye on God. He just kept the focus on God. That's one of those, that's true, but I don't know if that's the most helpful thing. I don't know if that's the most helpful explanation of yes, it's good to keep our eye on God. Yes, that's a good encouragement, but that might be one of those that's a good thing and a not good time to say if you're going through one of these things. That's not a great explanation of what was it about Job actually conditioned him into maturity so that he could maintain his composure and not wilt under pressure? Because isn't that the big question of how we go through our lives following Jesus, facing everything that we're facing, everything that the world is showing us and throwing at us? Isn't that the question of how? How do I keep my eye on God? How do I not wilt under pressure myself? Okay? So I want to look at what Jesus says about this too. Because with Jesus, we'll get into this a little bit more. The command isn't the final thing that he gives us. Like he says to do certain things, but in doing so, there's actually the promise of grace to accomplish it. In other words, God doesn't give us commands without the resources to fulfill it. He's not this drill sergeant just barking commands, and then we've got to figure out how to do it. And we've got to rely on our own resources. No, in Jesus, when we hear him say, do this, don't do that, there's an implicit promise of I will help you accomplish that very goal. So let's look at that. And we're going to look at the Sermon on the Mount. This is Matthew chapter 6. So we're right in the middle of, as we find Jesus here, we're right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. One of the most famous, if not the most famous, sermons that's ever been preached. Jesus probably preached this. He probably taught this in several different occasions. And this is either one of those or kind of a conglomeration of the most important parts of that, different perspectives on that. But it's what the kingdom of God's ethos is like from the king himself. This is what the kingdom is like, and this is how subjects of the kings or citizens of the kingdom behave. So here's how he starts out. And I'm giving you kind of the bookends because I want to show you how it starts and how it finishes. Although all of chapter 6, all of the Sermon on the Mount, I would really, there's often the question like, what radicalized you? Like, what really set you off in a certain direction? My answer is always, the Sermon on the Mount is the thing that radicalized me. Like, over and against anything in this world, it's like, what causes you to believe the way you do, vote the way you do, the ethics that you have, the morals that you have, and it's like, I just come back to the Sermon on the Mount is the way that we're meant to live. Okay, so here's how Jesus starts out chapter 6. It says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. So then Jesus goes on. He gives several more examples of spiritual practices that hypocrites do for the eyes of others. He talks about not just giving to the needy and serving others, but also praying and fasting. And these are to be practiced in a posture of humility, not out in the openness. Sometimes there are moments where you go and you pray publicly, or if you do a fast, someone goes, hey, you want to get lunch today? You don't have to hem and haw and do the Matrix kind of moves on getting out of lunch. You can just go, yeah, I'm fasting today. It's not a big deal, that sort of thing. What Jesus is talking about is, and he labels it, the hypocrites, those stage actors is what in the ancient Greek, they were called hypocrites. These stage actors perform their spiritual and religious duties so that others see them in a certain way, that they're seen as Jesus Storybook Bible calls them extra special super holy people or something like that. Like the extra special super holy people do these religious practices so everybody else goes, oh, look at how super and extra holy and special they are in the eyes of God. They must be someone. Jesus goes, that's nonsense. That's like being a stage actor in a play. That's just, you do that to be seen and to, you're reading from a script, and it's not an actual, real, authentic experience. So Jesus says, instead, do that stuff where no one can see you. Do it where it's just between you and the Father. That's your reward. He actually goes into this. He goes, those who do this for the eyes of others will not receive their rewards. Now, there's two ways to think about this. There's kind of end of the age, heavenly rewards that Jesus talks about for some of these spiritual practices. That's one way to look at this. But the other way, in context to the entire chapter of chapter 6 of the Sermon on the Mount, or of Matthew, is that there's a reward of becoming more like Jesus. When you do these spiritual practices, remember, when we do the things that Jesus did, we become more like Jesus, because that's one of our goals. Our goal isn't just to go to heaven when we die. It's, can we get as much heaven in us and around us while we're living? So another way to think of this reward is those who do these practices for performance, they do them for image management, they do them to project some kind of persona out into the world. That's the reward. That's what they want. They don't want to become more like Jesus. They just want to act. And that's the reward. There it is. Public accolade. But those that really want to be like Jesus will do the work, do the internal spiritual work of facing off of all the dark shadows that they carry inside themselves. And when they do that, maybe not, it's not fireworks and breakthrough every week or every day, but when they do, the slow obedience in the same direction. It's what Nietzsche and then later Eugene Peterson actually called it. The slow obedience in the same direction, they become more like Jesus. That's the reward that they will get. They will act more like Jesus in and of themselves. They will be more loving and more kind and more patient. More loving to everyone who comes across them. That's the reward. So in the end, a life that is so obsessed with image and performance will leave us broken. It will leave us empty inside, confused, and scrambling for meaning, peace, and sustenance. Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary. If you're tired of religion, if you're tired of your mask, if you're tired of everyone hoisting their expectations on you and you not knowing up from down, come to me, Jesus says, and I'll give you my yoke. I'll give you my life. I'll give you the easy yoke, and I'll do it. I'll work and I'll walk with you along the way. But if you do it just to seem religious, to seem spiritual, then that's all that you'll really get at the end of the day. Jesus, time and again, tries to bring our attention back to God to get us to focus on Him as our source. That instead of trying to project whatever kind of acceptable image to others we think they want, or to fit in whatever kind of mold we think they want for us that compromises our values, or that we try and fit in, or we try and manipulate and get from people. Instead of all of that, God has something much bigger in mind for us. So here's what Jesus at the end of chapter 6 says, verse 25. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will He not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Man, doesn't that seem like so pie in the sky? I mean, if you didn't know Jesus better, that seems nice, Jesus, but that seems really kind of checked out from the real world. Like, don't worry about what I'm going to wear or what I'm going to eat. Like, who says stuff like that? But then you realize, like, this isn't Jesus. He's not doing spiritual bypassing. He's not just patting you on the head going, oh, don't worry about it. It'll all figure itself out, right? Time heals all wounds, or any of the kind of like bumper sticker things we say to each other. Jesus is assuring His followers that they don't exist on an earth in a vacuum. That whatever they're facing, they can be assured they're seen, they're loved, and God is already at work around them and on their behalf. Remember, this is Jesus who knows that He's got an appointment in Jerusalem in just a few short years. that ultimately his road ends on a cross, but penultimately, 3 days later, he's raised from the dead. He can say this because zooming out, he knows the whole story because he wrote it. And he's in total and complete control of it. So when he's saying the little thing that you're focused on, that you're obsessed about, that's causing you fear and anxiety and a lack of peace, you need to see the whole story. You need to back up and know that God is in control and he's for you. God doesn't just, I think Justin said this last week, which I love. God doesn't just love you, but he likes you. You have a God who likes you, who sits on the throne. And he has proven that he can destroy death at the flick of a finger. Doesn't even take a magic wand for him. Doesn't even take any, just at the spoken word, he can overcome death. That's a God you can trust. And I like how Andy Stanley says, he goes, any guy who can predict his own death and resurrection and pulls it off is worth trusting. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? Anybody that can pull that off, you go, I don't know about a lot of things. I'm just following that guy because he says he's got it figured out. And if you can do that, the rest is gold. The rest is bonus for me. That's what Jesus is trying to get us to understand. The little things that we're focused on. And sometimes, I'll be candid, the little things don't seem like the little things when they're right close in front of your face. Jesus knows that, and he's not trying to minimize or dismiss any anguish or grief or scarcity or fear or anything that we're facing. He doesn't do that. He never diminishes someone's struggle. But what he tries to do is set it in its proper place in light of the bigger story. And he goes, I'm in charge. That's good news. Just stay close to me, and we'll get through this. That's what he says. Okay? Dallas Willard, in his book, The Divine Conspiracy, says this: with this magnificent God positioned among us, Jesus brings the assurance that our universe is a perfectly safe place for us to be. This bold and slightly humorous assurance about the basic elements of our existence: food and drink and clothing and other needs of life. He's like the birds are taken care of. That's what Dallas Willard is saying, is like, Jesus is kind of poking fun and making light of the struggle, the very real struggles we go on. Look at the grass, look at the flowers. Aren't they great? They're better than Solomon. We're like, oh my gosh, this is insane almost. It's so insane it makes sense, right? The food and drink and clothing and all of their needs of life can only be supported on a clear-eyed vision that a totally good and competent God is right here with us to look after us. And his presence is precisely what the word heaven, or more accurately, the heavens in plural, conveys in the biblical record as well as through much of Christian history. Check this out. Nothing, no human being or institution, no time, no space, no spiritual being, no event stands between God and those who trust him. The heavens are always there with you no matter what. That's what Jesus is trying to convey to us. Is that God is near. He's nearer than we can really comprehend. He is the ultimate good, and he is working on our behalf to bring about his will. The Apostle Paul would write something similar in the letter to the Romans. If God is for us, who can be against us? Isn't that so peaceful? If God is for us. Now, that's the big question. Are you convinced that God is for you? But if you can get there, if you understand Job's life doesn't, he's an upright, standing guy in the kingdom. God is for him, but it doesn't mean life is always kind to you. But if you can get to a point where you say, God is for me, God not only loves me, but he likes me. God is for me, then who can be against me? Okay? That's the question that puts so much of this in perspective for us. So let me with that being said, let me pivot just a bit. Because we experience so much anxiety and fear. The stuff that Jesus is talking about and saying, don't worry about that. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has its own grace. Worry about today, worry about now, and know that it's already taken care of. And yet, we still sit in the midst of a vast amount in our culture, even here in our church, anxiety, fear, scarcity, lack that we're worried about. So how? How do we do this? So a rabbi once told the story, gave an illustration of two kinds of ants in a jar. Black ants you can put in a jar, and then red fire ants you can put in a jar. If you close that jar up, the ants are fine. They get along, no problem. It's only when you take the jar and shake it vigorously, then the ants start to fight each other. They become each other's mortal enemy, and they will fight to the death. Now, thankfully, we're more enlightened than ants, aren't we? Aren't we? Aren't we? And when we hear that illustration, it's good to step back and go, you know what? We need to see a couple things. We need to see that others aren't the enemy, right? Jesus, he talks a lot about seeing our enemies as our friends, and the gospel being the transformational power that turns people that we may naturally or have very good reasons to be against or against us to turn enemies into friends, and how we bless friends and we forgive our enemy, or we bless our enemies and we forgive our enemies, okay? That's the first step, really, is to see, like, I don't want enemies. I want to bless all, love all, serve all, okay? So we need to see that others aren't our enemy. We need to see that sometimes there are agitators. There are people who are in the business. I've heard it in our culture, in our milieu right now, conflict entrepreneurs. There are people who their job and how they get paid is to actually stir up conflict among other groups of people. So we don't want to fall for others being our enemy, and we don't want to fall for these conflict entrepreneurs, people that see their sole goal in life as to stir up animosity in people. But there's a third thing we need to see. We need to ask ourselves, not just that, other people, say to ourselves, other people aren't our enemy, or there exist agitators in our world that we need to be aware of. The deeper and the kind of third level thinking is to actually go, why am I so susceptible to agitation in the first place? Why is it so easy for me to flip the switch from friend to enemy so quickly, right? Because one of our biggest problems is thinking that other people are our biggest problem. It's not enough to go, okay, those people aren't my enemy. And it's not enough to go, there are agitators that actually enjoy stirring people up. It's to look inside of ourselves and allow the Holy Spirit to shine a spotlight on those dark corners of our heart to say, why is it that I act this way? Are you with me? Okay, this is a big point. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's just for me. You just go, man, God's really working on Pastor Josh. This is awesome. Bless his wife and family. This is a big deal. Other people are not our enemy. Okay, check. There exist agitators in our world that we need to discern their motives. Check. Third, why do I fall for the same stuff time after time? Why do I fall for it? Why don't I turn the channel? Why don't I stop scrolling? Why don't I stop reading that information source? Why do I externalize this stuff? And I'll tell you what, I actually watched this, it's probably like this 20-year-old video of John Cleese. You know who John Cleese is? Like Monty Python John Cleese. Like, he's a British comedian, doesn't know God, follow God at all. He said the issue that people often face is that when they can't deal with the agitation inside of them, they externalize it onto other people. In other words, when we can't manage ourselves, we look for an enemy to scapegoat. And then we move from person to person or group to group thinking they're the enemy, they're out for me, they're going to take something I have. If they get more, I get less, right? If I can't manage myself, I need someone to scapegoat and blame. Are you with me? This is just me? Okay, again, God's really working on Pastor Josh. I think this is a big deal for us, to get to the third level of thinking, to go, why do I fall for this? And to be aware of ways in which we turn on people because we're not able to handle our own fear and anxiety that's in our heart. I'll give you some examples. Well, okay, I'm going to get into this further, so I don't want to ruin this. But externalizing and thinking other people are always the problem. Thinking that certain people have it out for us, that, oh man, these people are rubbing me the wrong way, so I need to avoid them. These are all ways where we externalize the anxiety, the stirred upness of our own heart. Instead of going, why do I feel this way around them? What needs to change in me first and primarily? Because here's the deal. You can't control. There's a whole lot. I think as I get older, the more I realize the less that I control. But I'm in control of my attitude. I'm in control of how I show up. I'm in control of the joy and the engagement that I show other people. I'm in control of that stuff. I'm not in control of politics. I'm not in control of what other people do with their life. I'm not even in control of my kids, y'all. I do the best I can, but they're pretty good boys. But, life is finding out more ways of how you're not in control and feeling out of control. And so we could either get more in a bubble where everyone around us looks like us, talks like us, votes like us, same bank account amounts as us, all, because I need people around me to be like me, to control my anxiety. And if anyone ever disagrees with me, well, that's their problem. And I've got to get them away from me, or I've got to get away from them. Because I need them to manage my anxiety because I can't do it for myself. Are we tracking? Does this make sense? Okay. The vision that Jesus has for us is that he's inviting us to become what Rabbi Edwin Freeman calls a non-anxious presence, someone who is mature, wise, and differentiated. And they're differentiated in themselves so they not only do not get dragged down by other people's drama, fear, and anxiety. Because have you ever walked in a room and other people's fear and anxiety soon because you kind of feel slimed or you kind of fall for it, you kind of get sucked into it? You ever get sucked into gossip? It's like, I don't gossip unless there's other people gossiping, and then I want the tea too. Like, well, you gossip. I don't know how to break it to you. But it's like a well-differentiated person sees stuff like that and goes, I don't play that game. I won't go there. I will love you, but I will draw some boundaries around that, okay? So a differentiated person in and of themselves who can also enter into these conversations, into these systems, into these organizations or relationships and actually bring healing and freedom to invite others to say, you don't have to live like this. But you have to establish it first in yourself through the work of the Holy Spirit, okay? So how? How do we not be troubled? How do we not get sucked into this? How do we manage ourselves, okay? And I want to give you four things, four thoughts. I think they're all very important. I don't think this is an exhaustive list, but how do we not be anxious or fearful in this world so that we can be a non-anxious presence, so we can engage people with peace and love and kindness? First is trusting that God is at work. That's the first main step, that you're not showing up with only your own resources, only your family of origin, your own will and ability, that God is already at work doing things that you're even unaware of. Romans 8:11 and then verse 26 says this, if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his Spirit who lives in you. The Spirit helps us in our weaknesses. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. This is not up to you to accomplish. God lives in you if you're following Jesus, and he is already at work bringing this about. What's he doing? It's not just that you're going to heaven when you die. It's that the image of Christ is being formed in you. Was Jesus anxious or fearful? Did he live in scarcity? Was he afraid of other people's expectation of him? Did he avoid people because he felt either like passive or passive-aggressive towards them? No. And the same way that Jesus showed up in different environments with the same way of integrity, the same ethos, he's trying to bring that about in you. He's already at work to do that if you'll let him. Because here's the thing, he will not force himself he will not force you to do anything that you're just stubbornly set against. This is the big caveat. God's omnipotent, like he has all power, but it still requires humility and the yes of the human heart to have Jesus formed in us. It is possible to resist the Holy Spirit, to be so dug in, to be so performance or image oriented, where you go, I care mostly about what other people think of me. And God says, would you surrender that? And you go, no. I need to be accepted. I worry about their acceptance and what they say about me and what they think about me. I need them to see this when my persona is put up. And I'd rather have that than intimacy, like a deep relationship with God. It's possible to do that. I would say, I think the real lack in the American church today, actually Richard Foster said it, it's depth. It's a deep people, not like super intellectual people, not people with a lot of resources, but like depth, maturity of character, who have surrendered and submitted themselves to Jesus, and they have the limp, the Israel limp, the Jacob limp, that they've wrestled with God all those years to arrive there. What we have is like this stuff, I feel like I say this year after year after year. I mean, not because you need it and not even, I don't know, I think we all need to be reminded so much is that God is working on your behalf and in your favor, and the primary thing he is doing is conforming you to the image of his son. And that means lots of repentance on our parts. And there's so much resistance in the church today because we have glitz and glamour and big buildings and big conferences, and it's all the image-driven stuff instead of the character of Jesus. I think that's an amen. That's how I'm going to take it. If you're not going to, it's like Jesus says the rocks are going to cry. If you're not going to say amen, like the phone's going to tweet at us or something. So secondly, understand, so trust that God is at work. Second is understanding that life is the laboratory, or laboratory in proper English. Understand that life, this thing that we do every day, is the laboratory of our transformation. Okay? What we do every waking moment, this is what forms us. Now, there are wonderful breakthrough moments. Maybe there's a moment in worship, or you go to a conference, or you're reading a book or the Bible, and it's like you have an aha moment. I love the aha moments. But mostly, formation shows up, and transformation happens through regular formation. And that formation occurs when I'm making my kids lunch, when I don't feel like it. How I talk to my wife. When not to throw you under the bus, buddy, but when my kids ask me or say, yeah, but, for the 100th time because they're trying to get something from me, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't handle that. Like, I have a choice that I'm making in that moment, right? And I could externalize it and blame it on them. Gosh, you're just so, like, whatever. Or I could go, where's this anger coming from? Where's this impatience coming from? Why can't I just be present with and for my kids? Because I don't have forever with them, right? Transformation happens through everyday formation, and it's in those everyday moments where God is inviting us. And I'll tell you this, more than that, the out-of-control moments that we experience, that we all experience, are experiments that tell us what's really going on inside. We want to think that we are who we are on our best behavior, on our best days. But we really are who we are. Now, okay, we're friends, right? We are who we really are deep down, and that's almost always exposed in crisis. Our best behavior is our image that we're projecting. If we're surrendered to God, He's going to crack the image. And He puts us in environments where we feel in over our head so that we can figure out, oh, that's what's in there? So there's an author, former pastor named Steve Cuss. And I think he doesn't cuss, but anyway, it's a funny name. He's from Australia. I don't know the connection, whatever. He pastored in Denver. Actually, he tells this story about before he pastored. The week after he graduated seminary, so he's like, younger, mid-20s, graduated seminary, got married the next week, and the week after that, he started his first job as a hospital chaplain. So in his first shift was a 36-hour shift. He showed up. The person coming off the previous shift hands him 2 pagers, because it's the 90s, so he gets 2 pagers. He says, when this one vibrates, do this. When this one vibrates, do that. Have a good night. And takes off. And he's standing there, his wife has just dropped him off, and he's like, what is going on? And almost immediately, like, the danger buzzer starts going off. And he shows up, and he first 36 hours, first week, in fact, he was just like, you ever had those experiences where like, what did I get myself into? And your eyes are just wide, and you're just like, I'm a shell right now, just going through the motions. So he's not been properly trained in his opinion. He doesn't know, hasn't been introduced to anybody. He hasn't been oriented at all. We got away with this a lot more in the 90s, by the way. The reason after his first couple weeks, he kind of had a debrief with one of his higher-ups, and he goes, this is one of the most terrifying experiences. He would show up, like, I think the first thing he showed up to was he walked into a room with the full extended family, like grandma, grandpa, cousins, mom, dad, and a little kid had just passed away. And he had to show up and offer condolences and try and plan services and do all those things. And he was able to do it, and in the debrief, he goes, that was just reckless. I had no idea what to do. And his supervisor was like, yeah, that's how we do it. It's a baptism by fire, because the sooner we can get you connected with you have no idea what you're doing, and when you show up and all the family systems are interplaying and pinging off each other, and you think you have your you're newly married, fresh out of seminary, you have all these Bible verses you want to offer people, and you realize when they look at you, you have nothing. We need to get you to that point sooner so we can actually train you in what to do, so you can be an effective chaplain. God does that in our life. And there's a real danger about a therapeutic age that we live in, that we've just called everything anxiety, and I have all the, I'm on all the meds and all the things. God actually puts us in these not dangerous, but extreme experiences, because He wants us to know what's in there, because we don't know. And if someone told us, like, man, you're carrying around so much pride and anger and fear and anxiety, we go, no, I got a Bible verse for that I slapped on there last week. I'm fine. But it's until you hit that crisis moment where we cry out to God and go, God, I'm at the end of myself. I'm realizing these people are not my problem. My spouse is not my problem. My kids are not my problem. What is my problem? And God goes, oh, I've got your attention. I've got your attention. So what I'm fearful of is that we have a bailout, like we're just used to bailing on things, on jobs, on relationships, and just like conversations. We cancel people, we block people. We're so thin-skinned sometimes. I mean, I know there are extreme, like, abusive. I'm not talking about abuse and danger and all that stuff. I'm talking about I had a disagreement over politics, and I blocked that person because I can't stand them anymore. It's like, that's a great way to stay perpetually immature in life, where God is actually asking us to go find common ground, find ways to interact with those people, the people that freak you out the most, that give you the most anxiety, that you want to be around the least. God goes, that's to make you more like Jesus, not to cancel them and reject them and to avoid them, but to love them and serve them and see them like I see them. Third, develop self-knowledge. All of this is kind of like presuppose that we're headed into this exact place, is that we need to understand ourselves, what's going on, be self-reflective and self-aware. In the Christian church and in the West, it's easy to be so God-focused, which is good, but to be so God-focused, we never go, why am I this way? Because we slap verses on it. Just let go and let God. Even good Bible verses like, if God is for us, who can be against us? But to never sit with ourselves and go, why did I react that way? Like, what's in there that's really getting stirred up? This is kind of a lost art, developing self-knowledge. It's been something throughout the last 2,000 years of church history that people that we would consider sage elders have said that's how they got to be a sage elder, wise and mature, is they sat with themselves in the presence of God and said, God, speak to me about this issue, this situation. Why did I, when that person cut me off in traffic, why did I want to run them off the road? Total hypothetical, I'm sure. Why at Thanksgiving, when they brought up that topic, I just stormed out the front door? Why did I do that? And how do I not do that? Because I don't think that's acceptable behavior. Why am I so short with my kids in the morning? Why? Why me? Remember, others aren't our enemy. There are agitators in this world. But getting to the point of asking, why am I like this? When I see Jesus being like this. God, fill the gap. Get me across it, right? I think there's both understanding your triggers, like what sets you off, and taking ownership for this, like this is my problem. If I'm triggered, because this is so countercultural today, I'm triggered and it's your fault. No, if I'm triggered, it's on me, right? It's on me to go, why am I so thin-skinned? But also your temperament. You have a wiring. It's a gift from God that makes you you. And some of it, sure, you can't hide behind like being an introvert as a shield. But understanding speaking as an introvert, by the way, if you're an introvert, the only way you make friends is if an extrovert adopts you. It's just how it works. So an extrovert adopted me. And my wife and I have had multiple conversations, like when we're out in a social gathering. I don't know if you know this. Introverts, their social batteries are like iPhone batteries. It lasts a long time in good conditions, but when it hits that last 20%, it's done in about 5 minutes. I don't know if you know that or not about yourselves or your loved ones, but we will be in a social situation, and I'm like, we're having a good time, and I'm like, man, I'm tired. Okay, I try and get Sarah's attention. She's just the life of the party, and everybody knows her, and she knows everybody's story, and she's a therapist and pastor, so, all of that. And I go, okay, babe, I'm ready to go. And she keeps talking. This has happened for 18 years now. And it's like, at the end of the night, I'm so aggravated and upset. And it's like, it took me a while to understand this about myself. But then to even go, well, I can't hide behind that. I actually have to communicate better about hey, when I tap you on the shoulder, I'm really ready to go. This isn't like a 15-minute warning. It's like, I'm crashing out in 5 minutes. You need to call an ambulance. It's going to be that bad if I don't go somewhere by myself, and recharge. So it's taken a lot of that understanding, yes, triggers, but also temperament, okay? Parker Palmer says this in Let Your Life Speak. We listen for guidance everywhere except from within. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you already embody, what values you represent. And then St. Teresa of Avila, Interior Castle, she says this, knowing ourselves is something so important that I wouldn't want any relaxation ever in this regard, however high you may have climbed to the heavens. Rather, let's strive to make more progress in our self-knowledge. So this brings us to number 4, you cannot do this on your own. Any self-knowledge always has to be tested because community often is a reflection back to us of what we're sending out. Formation is a community process because this isn't project self. This isn't project stroke our egos. Spiritual formation is for the sake of others. And it always shows up in how we show up in community. And we need the mirror back to us. We need people saying, are you okay? Because you were short with me. You seem irritated. Man, you seem really burned out. Like, can I help? Can I get something? You need a latte? What's going on? We need community, and we need feedback in community. And this is why I'm so proud of Mosaic. I want to plug us to us. Mosaic is a unique thing that from what I've ever been a part of, because we are intentionally asking people from multiple experiences and backgrounds to come to community. And we're not afraid of saying that. So when people come and say, I'm looking for this kind of church, it's fine. Maybe we can meet some of those needs or expectations, maybe we can't. But what we tell people is we exist to unite people in the way of Jesus. That means people who don't necessarily agree on things. We have people on the right, we have people on the left politically here who probably wouldn't see eye to eye, and our goal is to get them around the table to have a conversation and to find common ground. To say, I see where you're coming from, but I don't see it exactly like that. That's what we want. We don't want an echo chamber. We don't want everyone and everything to be the same. And ultimately, our goal is to get them around the same table, the Lord's table, to find commonality under the gospel. And I think, like, when we say that, what's really interesting is that when you say that as an expectation, to say, I don't expect us to agree on everything and that's okay, we have a lower tendency for conflict, because people who want that tend to be more of the kinds of people that Jesus describes and I'm describing. Centered in themselves and in the gospel, more patient and more able to hold tensions together and say, hey, if you don't see it that way, that's okay, I still love you. When you hold that as an expectation, there's a lower chance that you're going to have big blow-up fights about things that don't ultimately really matter. Okay? So I love you all. I'm proud of you all. Let's keep going on this thing, this experiment called Mosaic. Okay? I'm going to skip to the end here. I had some objections. If you have objections, just email Ben. That'll be fine. Ultimately, I just want to end on a poem. Can I do that? Every once in a while I do that. It seems kind of like old school Baptist to do that, but I love this poem by Rudyard Kipling called If. Now, it's written from a man to his son. I think it expands out to everyone. It says this: if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or be lied about but don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give away to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. You'll be grown, as we say, my sons and daughters. This, I think, ultimately expresses the goal. If you can keep your head about you when all the world's burning down, then people will know you're like Jesus, that you've been with him because you become like him. So why don't you stand with me? I'm going to have